Another build update and another attempt to make videos. This is the first idea for placement of the batteries versus the 42-gallon water tank. It puts most of the weight concentration, which is the lead acid batteries, furthest forward. But I decided to go with another configuration where the water tank, though it's not as concentrated density wise as the batteries, I figured that was, since the batteries fit under the floor, this is a better configuration to go with. Here I'm setting up to put fiberglass strips along the top edge of the 2x4s to bond them better to the plywood panels since I cut the plywood too short. I'm in preparation to lay down the tape, mixing chopped fiber into epoxy and applying it to the top of the plywood edge so that the fiberglass won't be trying to make sharp turns where it's laid down, since it won't. It'll pull away from the wet epoxy and then you'll get bubbles underneath it. So there are different types of fillers. The chopped strand, as I understand it, is structural, and part of my intent in doing it this way is because I want to learn how to do this. I've never used the chopped strand in there like that, and it is a mess to work with, but that's what I wanted to learn. What I'm seeing here is that gravity is kind of causing it to sag and then bulge out over the edge of the plywood, which isn't the best route for the fiberglass structurally, I would think. So here I'm laying up the fiber. Again, mixing some more epoxy. I'm using 4-inch tape. It's 10-ounce cloth. I had it for another project, and so now I'm applying it and wetting it out. So here's looking at it, and initially I'd considered letting the chopped strand dry and then shaping it first, but then I decided, well, it would probably bond better with less sanding and whatnot if I went ahead and did it all while it was still wet. The bulge that I saw initially was still there, obviously not ideal, but I decided to go with that the way it was. Here it is the next day, cured. The color's a little different. I'm satisfied with how it turned out, or at least I'm willing to move forward with what I have. So it'll make me feel better knowing that even if the 2x4 decides to start splitting or something, it's got some support. Next section, I'm cutting the walls out for the interior panels for the trough and doing some test fitting. Here I'm doing a rough mock-up, trying to get an idea of the placement of the kitchen sink and the stovetop, and there was a helicopter hovering a few blocks away, so I stopped to watch it because it's a helicopter. In this sequence I'm starting to fabricate, and I don't know what to call them. Are they bulkheads or floor joists or trusses? They separate the compartments that will be underneath the floor, and yeah, the extra epoxy there was just left over when I finished doing the walls and thought, well, why don't I waterproof something? I later decided that probably was just dead weight because that'll all be covered by the black tank. So here's a basic layout. I've decided to go with a single black tank with a more of a culinary gray tank or gray water tank up a little bit higher. So the back compartment there will be the black tank section and then two storage bins in the center between the battery compartment and the black tank. Here I'm fashioning a wall, or the interior wall. I'd already cut the board and messed it up, but was able to use it. So then I messed it up again here. Measured it perfectly for that cross member, forgetting that I had the two 1x2s on the side. But in the end, there's going to be a vertical, either a 1x2 or a 2x2 up that corner, and so it'll join the panels. Structurally, it'll be fine, just not ideal. Here I'm doing more work on the bulkheads, joists. I'm cutting notches into them because a 1x2 will go along the top edge to support it and connect them to the sides of the tub. Also putting floor panels underneath the battery and water compartments to give them more structural support, since everything will be supported by the interior structure, and then the outside fiberglass will hold it all like a sling. But I don't want that bowing out under the bottom. In this next section here, I'm adding 1x2 to frame in the, I don't know what to call them, bulkheads. And to you actual woodworkers out there, I'm sorry if my methods offend your woodworking sensibilities, but I don't claim to be a woodworker, but I can generally get things done. In this case, I'm sure it would be a stronger build if I were to glue them and clamp them overnight and all of that, but basically I'm taking this cheap Luan plywood and gluing it to the edges and then tacking it with panel nails, and the nails are just a titch too long, and so you see me with the grinder grinding off the edges of the nails. I initially was only going to use one piece of plywood for each bulkhead. However, after playing with it all, I later decided to add a second panel on all of them. So the first side I glue because the glue to the 1x2s because I can get a good fit. I'm not real confident that the outside lamination, it being so thin and poorly bonded to the plywood itself, that I get a ton of strength from that. But I've built this similar construction before, and it seems to work well enough. When I go and add the second panel to the other side of the what would you call it, an assembly, I use liquid nails because the 1x2s are just really cheap lumber. I haven't done anything to ensure that they're all the same thickness, and so there's variation in the thickness, and the liquid nails fills the gaps a little better and gives me a better bond. So says I. My wife used to love watching the home improvement shows, and I was I thought it was interesting that people would put these nice wood floors in and then they'd burn them with torches and whack them with chains and do all this stuff, and then in the end they would call it distressed wood. So when you see me going around with my grinder putting all these burn marks on my 1x2s, it's just distressed wood. So a little bit of artistic flair going on here. You can see that these panels don't lay perfectly flat, and the edges don't line up perfectly either, so I'm routing off the mismatch so that when it butts up against the other surfaces I get a better match, better fit. So this is the back wall panel. I originally cut the bottom of it and left it tall. Ideally, I would be able to run the panel from floor to ceiling. Structurally, that would be ideal, but not ideal for the actual build out because it's just too hard to work with, and I have to flip the tub up and put screws in from the bottom, and so I cut it down to size. This is just a mock-up of what the floor will look like with the water container there and the battery compartment underneath the floor. So here I'm fitting in the panel. I had to chisel and cut down the I guess it's a cutout or a groove, so where the back panel fits in flush, so that I get that radius around the corner where the fiberglass isn't bending too sharply. I put gussets on those corners to give me more strength, and there will be straps essentially of fiberglass on the outside of the wall coming down from the upper areas down into the lower, and that's what's going to form essentially the sling or the straps that hold the weight of it when it's on its stilts. I'm using similar technique to what I was using with the floor joists, gluing it and into the groove. Well, in this case it's into a groove, and then tacking it with the panel screws, and then clamping the flatter areas where I can actually clamp it. You know that saying about measuring twice and cutting once? Well, this is the second time I've done this panel. The first time I got it all drawn out, and then I took a wrong turn at one of my lines and cut right through the structural area, and you can see this is take two, and I still had a little strip there on the diagonal because the left edge is actually an inch shorter than it's supposed to be. Good thing I know how to fix stuff. In this clip, I'm permanently attaching the 1x2s that run along the floor level and then the bottom of the tub permanently to the panels on the side, since I won't be able to put any tacks in them from the outside later. Here I'm framing in the backmost bulkhead that forms a wall of the black tank, and so I'm trying to figure out where to put the supports. I'm also cutting out here the sloped floor of the black tank that will be fiberglassed in. This is with the cross members along the floor. As you can see, they gradually get higher. The ones down flat, and then they go up onto the edge. It's supposed to be underneath that floor panel right there. And here I'm just cutting a piece of 1x2 that will be at the floor level, which will be up by the water tank bulkhead there. You can see it in this test fit here, just a mock-up, and this is more of what it'll look like when the water tank's covered. Thanks for watching, and I should have more progress to show next week.